there were no depictions or positive examples of gay culture or gay lifestyle in the media. The only example that I remember was on sleazy daytime TV. So Sally Jesse, Phil Donahue would depict, gay couples or gay culture with this negative connotation and, always associated with the AIDS epidemic or this sort of untouchable and negative lifestyle that was sort of frowned upon. So I remember seeing this and, coming to the realization that I was gay because prior to that, I just always had felt this difference and known that I was different from other boys and that I wasn't a girl, but where did I fit in? So when I did start to sort of equate the two or put put two and two together in my mind, as a 10, 11, 12-year-old boy in small town Ohio, I kind of had come to terms with the fact that this huge part of myself and this part of the person that I was, just to the core, I would probably never share with anyone. And as that really started to sink in, and as I began to develop a bit more and, hit puberty and started to develop sexual feelings and, realized that it was such a huge part of who I was, it became very depressing. And, I kind of hit on it earlier, but that's when the sort of internalized homophobia began to develop, which is really a deadly thing for a young queer individual. So when I began drinking in high school, it was definitely socially. And, we hear so often that it's the social lubricant and it helps us to be more comfortable in social settings. And, we're a little funnier, we're loose, we feel more attractive, we fit in better. But when I began to realize that it quieted those fears and it quieted that pain and sort of internalized suffering, I definitely used it for that as well. And because that pain and that fear and those voices were constant, that really drove the frequency of my drug and alcohol use just through the roof. So, I'm not going to tell my whole story today. I've dove in very deep on several podcasts, and I will link all the different interviews that I've done in the show notes today. I feel like it's a little more conversational and a little less me, when the interview is conducted by somebody else. So I will link all of the interviews that I've done in today's show notes. Check those out. And I kind of want to turn the page here and focus a little more on the positive side. And we've talked a little about addiction, but more importantly, recovery. Let's talk about recovery in the queer community and some different resources highlighting the beautiful things my brothers and sisters in the queer community have achieved. The same study that I mentioned earlier also reports that over 8% of those individuals in the queer community that have expressed concern about their substance use have also sought treatment. Over 13% with comorbidities or a substance use issue in combination with a mental health concern have sought treatment and or are in treatment on a regular basis. There are also support groups across the nation, over 1,750 queer specific 12-step meetings are open and receiving individuals on a weekly basis. And the number of queer health professionals in the addiction and or mental health field has increased by 82% since the year 2000. That is huge because I think that a miss that we have is the amount of queer health professionals and the willingness or the transparency and truth that we are willing to speak to a queer health professional versus a cis hetero health professional. If we're talking about sexual habits or suicidal ideations, we are much more willing to be completely open and transparent if we are talking to a fellow queer individual with whom we feel comfortable and open and honest with. So that statistic makes me so, so happy. Also, in one of the interviews that I will link in today's show notes, I actually, not that long ago, only a few weeks ago, did an interview with my friend Courtney Anderson on the Sober Vibes podcast. And we did dive into queer recovery and we talked a lot about the existing resources and existing literature in the AA program and really how we need an update not only in the literature and the meeting schedules, but really just the acceptance and awareness of the sheer number of queer individuals who can benefit from a 12-step program, but are really hesitant to attend meetings that are not queer specific simply because frankly just to put it out there, the old timers and rigid resources that are in existence, it's really archaic. The resources that we use in the rooms are, to me, it seems like they are exclusive and not inclusive. We're not asking for much. We're simply asking to be included and represented in a program that is made up of probably a lot more queer individuals than you realize, and even so many more that could benefit but are not partaking because of the exclusivity. And I want to start chipping away at that, and I want to include. I am so grateful that I have this platform and that so many of you come back on a weekly basis to hear what I have to say. When I first started going to meetings, I didn't think that I had anything to contribute to a conversation or to a meeting. And I most times would pass and not contribute to the conversation. Slowly but surely, I peeled back those layers and that confidence began to build. And now I really do believe that I can add to the conversation. I can add to the rhetoric or the resources. And it's because of you that I continue to build that confidence. And I am forever grateful for each and every one of you that come back and really prove to me on a regular basis that that's true. So I don't even have the words to express my gratitude to you. If you just keep coming back and listening, that is enough. And I share these vulnerable moments and I share my story and my background in hopes that if someone out there is still struggling and they happen to hear this, that it will perhaps motivate them to take a step in the right direction. So if you have anyone in your life who could benefit from hearing what I had to say today or from any of the wonderful episodes that we have in their library, please share the podcast with just one person who still may be struggling and that could benefit from what we talk about here on the Sobriety Diaries. I am eternally grateful again for each and every one of you. I'll see you next week. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening today, friends. Hopefully you heard something that resonates with you. And if we help just one person, our job is done. Make sure you check today's show notes for all the information discussed in the episode and how to connect with our guest. And as always, check us out at thesobrietydiaries.com, youtube.com/Nate Kelly, and on Instagram at the Sobriety Diaries Pod. Please head over to Apple Podcasts and rate and review the show, friends. It truly helps other people to find the show, and in turn, we can help more people. Until next Wednesday, try your best not to drink and be good to yourselves. Bye, everyone.